Hey everyone, for those who don't know, I have a Discord, and in there I've got a channel where people can submit videos that they want me to respond to. I'm going to try to get better about letting people know when I'm responding to stuff that's been suggested on my Discord. This suggestion was from user Genin, and it is about whether or not video games affect your karmic value. Well, that's certainly a thing. Let's go! Alrighty, so before we start talking about video games, let's get into the fan art. First of all, we have an interaction between me and a little blue dragon by Cinderquill. Then we have a cartoon portrait by Sir Andre the Dank, and then my avatar responding to G4 with Anime Uwu Style by the Dragon Lord 2006. As always, thank you all for your fan art submissions, I really appreciate it. Let's move right into the video.
What are the karmic effects of playing computer and video games?
Okay, so he hasn't actually made a point yet, but I would like to say that facial drop as soon as video games are mentioned. You can kind of guess what the flavor of the discussion is going to be now.
Playing video games in the computer, the karmic effects is very bad.
But why? Is it because you're being lazy? You're not being productive? Is it because you're choosing a slothful, leisurely action as opposed to a more active one? I don't agree with any of the things I just said, but that's what I would expect here.
Because their intention is not pure. Even they are just characters, cartoons, but killing is still involved. And where there is killing involved is a violence, and violence is the worst thing in the world to collect the bad karma.
So, okay, let's try to parse this out. According to him, because violence happens within a simulated environment in a video games are inherently bad because they will negatively affect your karmic value. For those who don't know, within Hinduism, karmic value is the concept that determines whether or not you will be reincarnated. You accumulate a karmic value throughout your life, and if you die with a negative karmic value, then you are cast as a lower life form in your next life, with the ultimate goal being breaking the cycle, or moksha. Now, within Hinduism, thoughts are considered matter as anything else, so if you have negative thoughts, they negatively affect your karmic value. This would include violent thoughts, so playing a violent video game would actually, within that particular framework, affect your karmic value negatively. I say all that so that I can go ahead and throw out that he's not being inconsistent within the framework of his religion. So we're not going to be doing a teardown from within, we're going to be doing one from without. Much like how within Christianity, flooding an entire planet can be seen as wrong and morally reprehensible from the outside in.
Because everything depends on our intention. Our intention to kill the character. It is not that it is just we see it is all the children or the kids see that it is just a picture. No, they think it is something we can defeat it. And they become so hyper, they become so excited, and they want to kill it.
Alright, now we're at the point where I can actually levy some criticism here. There's a difference between things happening in a virtual environment and things happening in real life. Yes, there can be somebody who's incredibly excited when playing a video game to defeat whatever boss or enemy they're trying to deal with, but this isn't the same thing as somebody trying to do this to someone in real life. It's really no different than reading a book. You're participating in one way, shape, or form. In a video game, you're doing it through action, and in a book, you're doing it through thought. This participation in the narrative that's unfolding, within the realm of Hinduism, should affect you negatively either way. Now, the extent to which it affects you could be different. Actually, based on my very base-level understanding of Hinduism, there would be a difference. The problem, though, comes down to the fact that this is really no way for somebody to have to live their life. Somebody shouldn't be scared of simply having a violent thought, or engaging in a violent action in a simulated environment where no one was actually being hurt, because it will negatively affect their karmic value and have them cast as a lower life form in the next life. While there isn't really a concept of gods regulating karma, this is still a retributive justice system, which means, correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section, it seems like Hinduism has thought crime built in. I can think of at least a few ways in which a moral system would end up being very back-asswards, were it based on this type of theology.
It is saying in Indian mythological books, it is called Purana, that bhavana bhavanashini. Bhavana means your intention. If your intention is pure, you can cross the ocean of the suffering. But if your intention is impure, you can collect a lot of bad karma.
Okay, but the intention when playing a video game is to enact action against something that doesn't exist. Our intentions matter insofar as the things around us that we affect. But in a video game, you don't affect anything. Nothing actually changes. Data changes, but nobody's thoughts or feelings are manipulated in the process. Now, it may seem that way on screen. I mean, hell, I still won't do the genocide route in Undertale. But in reality, you're not actually hurting people. There are no people. There are no sentient life forms within that game. Just like the characters you read about in the book are always fiction. Even when the book is based in reality, like a biography, the character that you are reading themselves is a fiction. If I read a biography on Dwight D. Eisenhower, I'm not actually looking at Dwight D. Eisenhower. I'm looking at someone's representation of him. Anything I do to that representation doesn't actually hurt Dwight D. Eisenhower. So again, while the concept of this negatively affecting your karmic value may be consistent within Hinduism, I think I'm fairly comfortable saying that morality based on this is really incoherent.
Let me give an example. In Mahavira's time, like more than 2600 years ago, there was one butcher called Kal Kosher Kasai. He used to kill almost 500 buffaloes a day. He was a very big businessman, and he used to kill at least 500 a day. So he asked this king, that can I achieve moksha? Can I be liberated one day? Mahavira said, very easy. If you can stop this Kal Kosharik Kasai just killing the 500 buffaloes. He said, oh, it is very easy. He went there and he ordered that you cannot kill the 500 buffaloes. He stopped. But then he had nothing else to do. He draw the pictures and he start killing it. But killing went on. Then he said, just hang him upside down in the well. So he cannot do it. So what he did, when they hang him down to the well, so he was making the buffalo picture with his finger and he was cutting it. Because his intention was to kill.
Alright, so I hope that you guys are able to understand what he's saying, and if so, maybe you've caught on to the problem. This person in the story started by killing 500 buffalo a day, and then asked if they could possibly change, if they could achieve moksha and escape the cycle of reincarnation. So he went from affecting real, living, sentient beings to painting pictures, and in those pictures, the buffalo were being killed. He's gone from an unhealthy outlet of killing multiple sentient beings to a healthy outlet of simply drawing pictures. His actions are no longer leading to any tangible consequence. But this wasn't enough, so instead he wanted to be almost immobilized and hung upside down in a well, and then started harming himself because his outlet was taken away. The story may not be done yet, but I just hope everybody caught on to what actually happened there. In an effort to achieve moksha, someone went from being an unhealthy individual to having a healthy outlet, and then when the healthy outlet was considered bad for reasons, they now have to start engaging in self-harm. This is viewed as a positive thing, but within the framework of the story, your main character has been driven to self-harm, all because somebody else told him that he was doing a bad thing, when realistically, he was affecting nobody. Again, this is consistent within Hinduism, from what I understand. But that's kind of the problem. If it is consistent within Hinduism for a character to be driven to self-harm, then doesn't that ultimately mean that's a problem? I don't know. I would think so. Let me know in the comment section below.
And where there is intention to kill, they collect a lot of bad karma, and they can go lower in a life. Like if they are human, they can be animal in the next life. Or they can be lower than animal in the next life. They might come the life of the tree, or they come the life of the bacteria. It is one example in the I always tell people what intention can do for the people, and if it is very, very bad intention, where it can take you.
Yes, worrying about intention like this constantly, especially when you are actually affecting nobody, can lead somebody to go down a spiral where they are committing self-harm. That's a problem. And it's not me being hyperbolic. That's literally what happened in the story that you told your audience. Like, I hope that I'm not being uncharitable when I say that this seems like a huge issue, at least within the framework we're dealing with.
In the ocean, there is the biggest fish. It's like a dolphin. There is on his head, on that big fish's head, is like one lice. It is called Tandul Matsya. It is that lice body is smaller than a rice size, small rice. But it grows in that fish's head. But it has a mind. It has 5 senses. Even the body is very tiny, but has 5 senses. And when this big fish wants to eat small fish, thousands of fish comes in the ocean, and this big fish open his mouth, and maybe by the time it closes, maybe 100 fish comes into his mouth, all the other crosses. This small little teeny tiny tandul fish, which is very tiny, it has mind, it has 5 senses, and it sees it everything. That how ignorant this big fish is. If I have this big body, I will not let it go even one single fish. I will eat all of them. He doesn't have a long life, this little fish. But in even counted days life, he collected that many bad karma that it is written that he goes to hell. Hell means where there is always suffering.
Okay, so I actually wanted that entire story to come through so that I could point out a few observations. Observation number 1. If the dolphin, who's not a fish, has to consume other living organisms in order to survive, because that is the diet of the animal, and as an animal, it doesn't have sapience, so it doesn't really have any self-awareness to deal with this. No self-awareness to make an active choice to consume something that is not sentient. Shouldn't the dolphin's karmic value constantly spiral downward and there's no way around it? It's not like the dolphin actually gets a choice in the matter. Unlike humans, it doesn't really have the same type of self-awareness. And if you want to argue that dolphins are smart enough to have that kind of self-awareness, then substitute literally any carnivorous animal in for this argument. This would mean that somebody could potentially get trapped within the cycle of reincarnation, constantly finding themselves as carnivorous animals, literally unable to have a positive karmic value because of the amount of lives that have to be lost so that they can survive. The only option at this point would be suicide to prevent the karmic value from going further in the negative zone, which causes a whole nother issue. I know that the point was to talk about the little lice on top of the dolphin's head and how it was accumulating bad karma, but then there was that point where you said that ultimately this can lead to hell, a state of constant suffering. Not terribly different from the Christian hell, just maybe different in manifestation, if not in concept. So karma, which is supposed to be a method that grants retributive justice, can, within the framework of that religion, lock somebody into a state where they have no choice but to spiral down to hell because they have been reincarnated as carnivorous animals or parasites. That doesn't seem like a just system at all. Like, in any way, shape, or form. That actually seems incredibly unjust. Not as bad as the Christian system that says that, any sin gets you burning in hell forever, but this one most certainly has its own style of slippery slopes built in that cause me to hold some issue with it.
Continuously suffering. There is no happiness there. There is no any peace there. It's always suffering, painful.
Okay, so you're describing how I feel about my channel sometimes, and I'm starting to feel kind of attacked.
So that's what people can collect. Even though this little fish, tandul fish, cannot kill anybody, cannot eat any fish, but its intention. Intention is that I will not let it go even one. In counted days, it collects that many heavy karmas. So heavy karma take people downward. And our life, if we are human and our intention is not pure, our intention is not so good, we are going to lose this opportunity as a human being. So I will suggest all of parents that don't let your children play those kind of games, because the games, their intention is very bad, because they want to kill the characters, and where there is killing involved, even it is mental, it brings a lot of bad karma.
And now we get into the consequentialist side of the argument, where regardless of your intent, you are now attempting to police people based on the bad thoughts they might have as a result of their actions. You're urging parents not to let their children play video games that involve violence. And while I can understand there might be a concerned parent or two in my audience that tries to give the rebuttal that violent video games are bad, violence can be anything in a video game. As an example, let's take a look at Mario Brothers. Violence happens in that. You literally crush Goombas and Koopas under your weight. Hell, in the average playthrough of Mario World, I've probably at least contributed to one mass extinction. However, most parents wouldn't see Mario as a violent video game. But it most certainly is, especially because of the method that you use in order to fight. Subjecting thousands of Bowser's minions to the equivalent of dying via trash compactor? Kinda grisly. Kinda horrible. It's portrayed as cute and fluffy, so it's not really a huge issue, but then you get into the concept of religion being worked into here, at least this particular one, and now you can't even play Mario Brothers because it's too violent. This leaves people with, I guess, Animal Crossing, which is a good game, and, what, Barbie's Horse Adventure? I don't know, the options are getting real limited now.
And person can be suffering even in this life. You never know, because the karmic effect can happen in this life. It is not that that person has to wait for the next life to get the bad result. So I suggest that those kind of games which teach children a lot of violence, it is not good for the family, good for the society, good for the nation. We need to put ban on them, those kind of characters, those kind of games, and they are not our good future at all.
Alright, and now the issue is one where you've jumped the shark. Originally, you were just proposing that parents not let their kids play these games so that the kids can be raised to be more pure of mind and have less negative karma. We disagree, and I'm willing to voice that disagreement. It's literally what my channel does. But that's about as far as we went. I didn't see much harm in it past that. But now you're arguing for legislation. And here we find the actual crux of the issue. When religion affects legislation. If someone in your nation is not Hindu, but they are forced to conform to religious standards that they do not actually operate under, that is authoritarian bullshit. If you're a Christian, you wouldn't want to operate under a Muslim government. If you're a Hindu, you wouldn't want to operate under a Christian government. And no monotheist wants to operate under a polytheistic government, even though some polytheistic styles of governing would literally be okay, considering that their god would be venerated within that framework as well. But anyway, point is, once you start arguing that legislation should be built based on your religion, making arguments that violent video games will lead to the fall of the nation, you pave the way for legislation that is based on thousands of year old holy books that haven't actually been updated to reflect the people who conform to those religions. This is how you get people banning homosexual marriage because it breaks the family unit that God ordained in the Bible. Or in your case, banning media that in many cases provides a healthy outlet for people who otherwise wouldn't have one. Take your example of the rich guy who was slaughtering buffalo. Within the narrative of your own story, he was driven to self-harm, due completely to the tenets of the religion that you subscribe to. I didn't have to make that extrapolation. You got us there within your own narrative, and you seem to be under the assumption that that style of thinking is viable for legislation. Sorry, that's gonna have to be a hard disagree from me. I am very anti-harm when it comes from religion, I'm very anti-harm in general, and I'm incredibly anti-self-harm. We've officially found each other in staunch ideological opposition.
It is not the good future for the nation at all. So, and the children will go violent. And they will create trouble in the society when they grow up because they get habit to kill. And they will not even in the play, if they were playing when they are grown up, they might kill each other. So teach your children not that kind of games. Teach something mathematical games.
This just in, local man plays Call of Duty and decides to go on a shooting spree because he liked how it felt in the video game. Even though there are more violent video games in the market, in the United States at least, than ever before, strangely enough, our reported violent crimes per capita have been decreasing over the last 30 years. And it's been a pretty smooth downward slope. Weird. Almost as if violent video games don't actually lead to violence. Now, that's not to say that media doesn't have an effect on us. If media had no effect on us as individuals, then marketing would be a completely useless endeavor. And capitalism has showed us that that's not the case. People can be manipulated into thinking things, into doing things. But when it comes to extreme things like violent action, there doesn't seem to be as much of a correlate, at least on a group level. But if you were arguing from facts and data, instead of what you think things should be normatively because of your religion, then maybe you would come to a different conclusion.
Where their brain gets sharp. Or historical games, where there is knowledge involved, where there is maybe philosophy involved, where there is psychology involved, where there is brain can sharper again more, and they become more intelligent, they become more peaceful, they become more calm.
You are aware that most of the games that actually do teach history in an effective way are also violent? Like, hell, look at Assassin's Creed. The Assassin's Creed series does a very good job of showing historical events in at least a reasonably accurate way. More reasonably accurate than the History Channel anyway. But in those games, you're literally playing an assassin. They're inherently violent. But because those video games happen to be taking place in historical times, and the developers had at least a good sense of attention to detail, there have been a lot of people who've taken the time they've spent within those violent video games to actually study up on some history. They become enamored in the worlds that they find themselves in, even though the video games themselves are violent, and start researching what the time periods were actually like. I personally actually have a lot of friends who wouldn't have been such buffs on the history of World War II if they hadn't been playing Battlefield 1942 on the PC way back when. And that is also an incredibly violent game.
And they will not disturb the family, they will not disturb the society, they will not disturb the nation. That is in our hand. I suggest our government needs to take the step towards this. Because these games, they are making our society very violent. And it is just time to stop those companies who are making that kind of games. We are all responsible for that violence because we are not protesting. We need to protest, and we need to force the government put ban on those companies. Make good games where they can learn how to respect their parents, how to respect brothers and sisters, how to respect animals, how to respect everything. And when we teach those kind of teachings to the kids, they will be very peaceful and calm and very useful for the society, and they will collect always good karma.
Not gonna lie, it sounds like you're trying to legislate media away so that you can create the perfect type of people for your society, almost as if you're attempting to brainwash people to be your idealized style of human. Okay, so the interesting stuff I found in this episode was how karma works within Hinduism. It actually works differently than how I originally thought. I actually had about 3 minutes of audio recorded that I had to completely scrap as I was doing my research, so I'm happy about that, but the fact that this ended up moving into an argument about legislation instead of about theology was a little strange to me. And this is one of the many, many, many reasons why religion should have no hand in government whatsoever. Any religion. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, and I'll probably say it 1,000 more times. I have no problem with people being religious. I have no problem with religion existing. I do have a problem when religion, or at least people through the lens of their religion, try telling others how they should live their lives. When those other people might not even share your religion, or even your methodology behind your religion. And when you try moving that argument into legislation, when you try starting to enact law as a result of your religion, completely ignoring anybody else's, you open the door for incredibly violent theocracies. So let's all agree that theocracies are not styles of government that we would like to actually see crop up any more than they already have. On that note, I'll go ahead and shill out a little bit for my channel. If you haven't already checked out my Patreon, please do so. YouTube likes to demonetize a lot of my episodes, and the episodes that take the most time to work on don't actually get promoted by the algorithm. So if you want to help out in the long run, then Patreon is the best way to do so. Even just $1 a month helps. If you'd like to help with the more immediate, then there's a PayPal link down there as well. There, I'm done rattling my tip jar. I feel like garbage when I do that anyways. Alrighty, if you enjoyed the video, let me know by hitting the like button, go into the comment section, do all that fun stuff. Literally anything helps as far as the algorithm's concerned. And as always, everyone, insert end of video tagline here.